The story of the real Ichabod Crane. When most people hear the name Ichabod Crane, they picture a lanky schoolteacher being chased through the misty woods of Sleepy Hollow by the dreaded Headless Horseman. Washington Irving's 1820 tale has become a Halloween classic, shaping the way Americans imagine one of literature's most comically tragic figures. But behind the name lies a real man, a soldier, not a schoolmaster whose life could not have been further from Irving's creation. This is the story of Colonel Ichabod Bennett Crane, a career officer whose military service spanned decades and wars, and whose distinguished family left an enduring mark on American history. Unlike his fictional namesake, he faced real battles, commanded men in combat, and carried a legacy of courage and sacrifice. Yet, thanks to Irving's pen, his name became forever linked to a character more likely to flee from a fight than lead one. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travel homeward. So begins Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, 1820, where the hapless schoolmaster Ichabod Crane, still in possession of his head, meets his haunting fate. Irving's vivid description of Crane's awkward frame has stayed with readers for generations. Tall and gaunt, with spindly arms and legs, oversized hands, feet like shovels, and a small, flat-topped head adorned with enormous ears and bulging green eyes, Ichabod cut the figure of a scarecrow come to life. On a windy day, with his baggy clothes flapping about, one might have mistaken him for one blown loose from a cornfield. But behind the name was a very different man. The real Ichabod Crane, Ichabod Bennett Crane, was born in Elizabethtown, New Jersey in 1787, less than 50 miles from the fictional Sleepy Hollow. Far from the timid pedagogue of Irving's tale, Crane was a career soldier, a stern and battle-hardened officer who would have met the Headless Horseman with saber drawn rather than with skirts of his coat flying in retreat. Crane began his military life in the U.S. Marine Corps before transferring to the Army during the War of 1812, where he was commissioned a captain and placed in command of forts along the Niagara frontier. His career was long and active. Brevetted to major, he served in the Black Hawk War of 1832, fought in the Second Seminole War in 1835 under future President Zachary Taylor, and guarded the U.S.-Canadian border during the Patriot War of 1838. By 1843, he had risen to colonel, a post he held on the eve of the Mexican-American War. By chance, Crane and Irving crossed paths, at least geographically, in 1814. Both were at Fort Pike in Sackett's Harbor, New York, Irving as an aide to New York's governor inspecting defenses, Crane as an artillery captain. Historians debate whether they met, but Irving, always alert to unusual names, likely took note of Crane's and saved it for his famous tale. If so, he could hardly have expected that the proud officer might resent the comical use of his name, and resent it he did. Colonel Crane, by most accounts, disliked being associated with Irving's bumbling character, and one can imagine his irritation when soldiers chuckled at their commander's name. A man of discipline and valor, he came from a family with a deep legacy of service and sacrifice. His grandfather, Stephen Crane, was a Continental Congress delegate who died of wounds received in the Revolutionary War. His father, Brigadier General William Crane, lost a leg at the Battle of Quebec. His brothers also served. William, as a naval officer in the War of 1812, and Joseph as a congressman and judge. Ichabod's own son, Charles Henry Crane, became a brigadier general and U.S. Surgeon General, attending Abraham Lincoln in his final hours at the Peterson House. A nephew served in the Army of the Potomac during the Civil War, and a great-nephew, Stephen Crane, later authored The Red Badge of Courage, 1895, a literary legacy more befitting the Crane family than a Halloween ghost story. Unlike his fictional counterpart, Colonel Crane lived out a long career and died of natural causes while in service in 1857, not spirited away by supernatural means, as Irving's tale would have it. So as we mark the 230th anniversary of Colonel Ichabod Crane's birth, while his name continues to echo through movies, television, and the shadowy lore of Sleepy Hollow, we are left to wonder, which Ichabod Crane deserves remembrance? Should we honor the soldier, or accept the schoolmaster as his legacy? Perhaps as you carve your jack-o'-lantern and ready your costume, the question will linger. But beware one wrong answer on a dark and eerie night, and you too might lose your head.